Hello everyone, I'm recording this Thursday to go up Friday because tomorrow I'll be busy, so I won't be able to record it tomorrow. Anywho, this is a continuation on from Wednesday's video. On Wednesday we talked about the 7 Awesome Kids channel and the fact that the person who owned that channel is now facing trial for child molestation with a minor. Now, the reason why this is an extension of is because we're going to talk about another case which is I didn't know anything about until I watched Ready to Glow the other day. Just change that a bit, that's better. I watched Ready to Glow the other day and she was covering it. And I was like, oh my god. And this guy's British, which makes it even worse. And also, we're gonna then discuss the 3 major long-term effects of child abuse. While I am including all forms of abuse, the initial story is just about child sex abuse. Also, we will abuse and paedophilia, like most people do too, as the umbrella term, but the actual definitions are, there is paedophilia, which is the attraction of a child that's prepubescent, so pre-puberty, and if you're going off averages, that's like 0 to about 11. Then there's hebephilia, which is the attraction to children in early puberty, which is like 11 to 14. And then can't spell these words. Hyper-vigilance, which is the attraction to late puberty children, which is like 15 to 19. Now, that is the definitions, but everybody does use the word paedophilia as the umbrella term for all child abuse, anybody messing with a child under the age of 18. Now, I'm going to talk about this case, and when I know Ready to Go, I know she had issues with this, and she really struggled covering the story. And when I was doing the research, I was struggling as well. Most of you guys know that the one thing I will not allow is the abuse of children. And for those that are saying, well, what qualifies her to do this, right? I have to do this every time I do a video like this. I have a degree in forensic science and criminology. While I was studying for my degree, I also studied forensic psychology, and while studying the forensic science side of things, we studied cases of child abuse, of child molestation, and how they are investigated, why they're investigated the way they are, etc. We went through case studies after case studies, and since university I've been researching child abuse for a long time because I am in the process of compiling a non-fiction book about this topic, because it is something that we need to educate ourselves on, and people are getting things wrong in every country. There's 2 huge cases in this country, there's huge cases in the US, there's huge cases in other parts of Europe, and developing worlds, it's even worse. It happens in Asia, it happens in Australia, it happens in South America, it happens everywhere. And what we're doing to protect the children in a lot of cases isn't enough, which is what that book's about. But back to this video. That's how I have, as most people would say, the right or the knowledge to be able to say what I do, because I've studied it for over 15 years. So the case that Ready to Glow covered is a case of a British paedophile. His name is Jason Leonard, who has been put on a watch list, and he's now has a sexual harm prevention order, which basically means he can't have access with children unless there is an adult present. There's a lot of places he can't go to, and they're also, I think they've taken his passport off him as well, so he can't leave the country. And you'll understand that one in a minute. He's been very vocal. He was arrested for child pornography, And when he was arrested and he was being questioned, he actually admitted to the police that his ideal partner is 12 to 14 years old, and the only thing stopping him from acting on his desires is his elderly mother, who is of advanced years. He wants paedophilia to be accepted like trans and gay are. But we've said this before and we'll say it again. Everything that's involved under the LGBTQ umbrella is completely different from paedophiles and child abusers. A lot of people will say, yeah, but there are people under the LGBT umbrella that do abuse, and it's like, yeah, but it's the same as straight people. Straight people abuse kids. You don't have to be trans or under the LGBT umbrella to abuse kids. Anybody can abuse kids. Anybody. He was jailed in 2013 for the child porn, and he expressed his desire to leave the US because he believes the UK police, judiciary and government are persecuting paedophiles. He also says if a child is old enough to talk, it is old enough to have sex. No, it's not. He believes in the fullness of time it will be accepted in the same way homosexuality is today. Fuck off. His lawyer says the SHPO, which is the Sexual Harm Protection Order, is completely disproportionate for this offender, ignoring the fact that he has told authorities he wants to abuse somebody between the age of 12 and 14, and he said that he would if he had the ability. The judge who was hearing Leonard's appeal of the SHPO upheld the SHPO, stating that he was deeply disturbed with a frankly alarming attitude towards paedophilia, and his passports have been taken by authorities to prevent him leaving the country to pursue victims in other countries. In this country, the age of consent is 16, countrywide. I'm not sure if it's different in Northern Ireland or Southern Ireland, but Southern Ireland's not part of the UK. Despite what people may think. Northern Ireland is, Southern Ireland isn't. Don't ask why. That's a different topic, and that's related to religion, so. But on this front, what the actual fuck? This guy thinks that if a child is old enough to talk, it's old enough to have sex. No, it's not. There is a reason why we have a age of consent, and that is because a child under the age of, the general rule of thumb is about 16. There are some countries where it is 14. Which to me is too young. Sometimes even with 16 I'm like, The reason why the age of consent is where it is because at age 16 your hormones aren't as in high gear as they were while you were going through puberty, because usually by 16 your puberty stopped. For most people anyway. Not for everybody, but for most people. And you've learned enough about who you are, and you've learned enough about everybody around you to learn, if I do that, this is the consequences. Before that age, you don't give a shit about consequences. You don't think about your future. You don't think, if I do this, it'll cause this, 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 this and this. You don't think that. Some kids do. I was able to make decisions like that at probably say 12 or 13. But I've always been more mature than my age, which is one of the reasons why my husband's nearly 10 years older than me, is because I'm more mature than my age. And a lot of my friends have always been older than me, which isn't hard because I was always the youngest in the year at school, but I've always had friends older than me because the plain simple fact is a lot of people aren't as mature even at the same age. I can pull out 3 people that are the same age, and I can tell you out of those 3 people who's the most mature out of those 3 people. And it comes down to life experiences, it comes down to what you learn, it comes down to the family network you have, and all sorts. So yeah, that was the case that really got me pissed off. But I didn't want to put it in Wednesday's video because there was already a lot to unpack with Wednesday's video. Especially because we had to address the whole fact that YouTube did have an impact and should really have thought of that situation a little bit better. This situation, however, is completely different, and this guy should never be allowed out of the country or anywhere near a child. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. But still my opinion. Right. Now, there are more than three, but these are three that sort of exist quite often. And one of them is actually an umbrella term for about 5 or 6. You'll understand what I mean. While one of these is more related to sexual abuse, although it does happen with other forms of abuse, just not as often. So, 3 long-term side effects of child abuse. First one is depression. As a result of child abuse, some people will have a long-lasting depression, which sometimes include other things such as self-harm, substance abuse, suicidal behaviour, eating disorders, due to the fact that they feel they are to blame for what was, and that they caused it, they allowed it to happen, that it was their fault, and guilt that they did it, and guilt that they didn't say anything. It takes years of therapy and years upon years of having meaningful relationships and good interactions with other people to fix this. And in the real life and basically meaning people I've known in my life and the case studies I've covered, this is pretty much across the board. It includes all forms of abuse, not just sexual. It includes physical, it includes emotional, it includes psychological. And you think that just saying one thing to a child isn't anything, but it can affect them for the rest of their life. You can think that one instance of doing something that you shouldn't have done to a child isn't going to cause that much damage, but it does. It can cause issues. It can cause binge eating. It can cause people to have low self-esteem and anything that essentially falls under the umbrella of depression and mental health. And it's one of the reasons why child abuse is so damaging, because it affects the way your brain works, especially when 9 times out of 10 the people that abuse a child are those that are in a position of power, regardless of what form of abuse it is. The adult is in a position of power over the child. The child trusts that adult, and then the child is then made to feel a sort of pain because of something that the adult did, and they then lose trust of the adult, but their brain gets messed up and they don't form the correct things that people who don't get abused form. So you can have 2 people, one person's been abused, one person hasn't, and they can be completely different psychologically, even in the same family, where you've got 2 girls, one's fine, no issues, and the other one's an absolute mess. And it's the one that was an absolute mess that was abused. I'm not saying that the severity of the abuse denotes the severity of the mental illness, because there are some people that are innately stronger than others. I've known this to be true in both the real life cases that I've seen and the case studies, where you have 2 people in exactly the same circumstances, but one stronger than the other, and that's part of our own mental strength. You can still be mentally ill and have mental strength. It all depends on how you learn how to deal with it, and it does mean that you do have to have therapy. It does mean that you do have to have years upon years upon years of good interactions with people. Side effect number 2 is hyper-vigilance. Now, this is across the board, but it tends to concentrate a lot more on sexual abuse than any form of abuse, though it does happen with other forms of abuse. Basically means, say Jessica was abused as a child by her stepfather. It's just a name I'm pulling out of my head. And as they grow up, they internalise what happened, they don't get the help, whatever. When they then have a child, they will then be watching anybody that has contact with that child and be extremely hyper-vigilant. And they could potentially see something which is just a child, realising that certain things feel good as my child's being messed with. These instances are quite clear in, they've used these, there have been cases like this, they've been covered on the Steve Wilkos shows and Dr. Phil. Now I'm not saying that they're the be all and end all, but some of the cases on there are actually real cases, and although sometimes Dr. Phil's methods are a bit weird, sometimes he makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying he makes a whole lot of sense, but sometimes he makes some sense. But the guy is a trained psychologist. He has a PhD in psychology, so he knows what he's doing. And he knows that people who have been abused will be hyper-vigilant about abuse when they are an adult. And it happens. As a child, as a teen, you learn that touching certain things, that doing certain things makes you feel good. You don't understand why. You don't understand the full context of it. And then eventually you'll learn that that's to be kept away from everybody else, that it's private time. But at first you don't know that, so sometimes you'll see, say, a 4-year-old, she'll be going down the slide and she'll think, oh, that sort of feels nice, so she'll keep doing it. And then somebody will say, oh, well, she's doing it because she's being abused. No, she's just doing it because she's found out that it feels nice. I'm just using that as an example. JK News have covered this a few times, where when they were kids, there was one of them found it, you know, the pole that on climber frames. She was, I think it was one of the girls, she was going down it and she realised it felt nice. And then I think Boyd said he used to hunt the jungle gym. But that's the type of thing, you learn that that feels nice, so you do it, and then eventually you learn, oh, that's not to be done in public. But there is a difference between being abused and showing overtly sexual behaviour and just being normal and showing sexual behaviour. Both are very valid, both happen, and it's just the way things are. And if you are worried that your child is overtly sexual and that it is doing things that it shouldn't be doing, then either you sit down with them and have a conversation, or you take them to the doctor. And then the doctor will then tell you if something needs to be done or not. But there are instances where there's a small hint of something and they blow it out and it turns out that no, the child wasn't abused. And then there are cases where a woman who has been abused has a kid, and then when the kid's a little bit older, they will accuse anybody that has contact with the kid, anybody, that they've abused that child, even if the child says that it hasn't been abused. And in some instances they will convince the child that they've been abused. And that is a negative side as well, where you have to be careful. If you've been abused when you have a child, you have to second guess yourself. And if you are worried, then take them to the doctor. Take them to your family doctor and say, look, I'm a bit worried, or mention something to a teacher. Because when you go to a doctor or a teacher, they're what's called a mandated report. It's the same in this country. If you think abuse is happening and you go to them, they have to report it. There's no ifs, ands or buts. I think technically I'm a mandated reporter. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I am, because of my background. But if you genuinely think your child is being abused, then you do something. If it turns out that it isn't, don't then try to say you're lying, or you're just protecting him. No, it just means that there's nothing to prove there's abuse. But also, listen to your child. If the child says there's nothing, then leave it. If the child says there is something, then investigate it. The police do have the knowledge and the know-how on how to deal with these things. I'm not saying they get it perfect. I'm not saying they get it spot on 100% of the time, because they don't. But that's their job. And then there is withdrawal from social and physical contact. And I'm actually going to talk about a bit of a flip towards the end of this as well. A lot of people, especially those that have been beaten or raped, will shy away from any physical or social contact from others because they don't want to put themselves in a position where they could be hurt again. It's just one of those things of, I've been hurt, so fuck you, I'm not going to let you hurt me, type of thing. And it's a bad way to live, yes, it's a bad way to have, have a normal life. You have to learn to essentially, say, right, this is a situation I can handle, this isn't. And again, it takes years of therapy and it takes years of good social interactions for it to be fixed. And sometimes it could just be sitting down with one person and then increasing it to 2, increasing it to 3. But they will also shy away from physical contact, a hug, a kiss, or a relationship. Anything like that. Anything like that. They will need to look into this in the long term for their own safety and security. But they will also have to learn to become more one second guys. They will also have to learn, with the help of therapy, with the help of those that are around them, that they do what I need you to. There we go. They need that therapy, they need that support to help them form into a relationship. They will withdraw from sexual contact, or they will flip the other way. I have actually got a few case studies on this as well. But they will also flip the other way, where they will be overtly sexual. They will be extremely sexually promiscuous. So, there are some people that are abused, have the forethought to actually get help before they have children, because they know that there is a possibility of abuse, that there is a possibility of somebody harming, of them or somebody else harming their child. So they want to get that help before they put themselves in that situation, and it is a good thing. And I would suggest that anybody who's been abused at least go to a few therapy sessions, just to see if it is going to help you or not. Children cannot consent to sexual activity this is what we mentioned earlier, as they don't have the cognitive ability to think of the long-lasting effects of sex and what it causes. Very true. There is a difference between disciplining and beating or emotionally abusing your child, and it's something that you have to be careful of. Your actions as a parent can affect the child in the long term and can affect the way that they parent their children in the future. Okay, using 2 very famous cases. One we've talked about on this channel before, and the only reason why I'm going to use this is because I know this is a case that everybody who watches me knows about, which is the Daddy of 5 case. The abuse with the Daddy of 5 seemed to centre mainly around Emma and Cody, especially Cody. And before Emma and Cody were taken out of the house, Cody was already showing signs of being affected by the abuse. There was the fact that he was sullen, the fact that he didn't want to spend much time with his siblings, the fact that he wants to be on his own. And then, if you remember, there was the video they did where they were going to Disney but they weren't taking Cody because he'd got poop and spread it all over his bedroom or something. And that is could possibly be, I'm not saying it is for certain, but it is a high possibility that it is an effect of what happened to him within the family home. And it is going to take years of therapy, and it is going to take years of people being there for him to be able to realise and say, yeah, my dad's a dick, which we all know Mike is. My dad's a dick, and this is what I need to do. And eventually he will learn that, but at the minute he needs a good family home and all that. So let's just cross our fingers. And what I was saying earlier, that they can either shy away from physical contact, which is highly common, or they can become highly sexualised. This is a very famous case, and I think I mentioned it on Wednesday, which is the Eileen Wuornos case. Anybody who doesn't know about this, she was a serial killer that killed men. Charlize Theron won an Oscar for playing her in a film I can't remember when it was, but it was a couple of years ago. And when Eileen was a child, she was abused by members of the family. And then by the time she was about 8, she was already trading sex for money. And I would say that she was, as a child, involved in more than one case of paedophilia, but either her parents didn't care, or didn't have the money or the resources to help her. In more instances, I would imagine that they didn't care, because nobody in her family seems to care a damn about her at all. I'm not saying that we should feel sorry for her, because we shouldn't, because she did kill men. But if she'd have got help, could she have been prevented from killing those men? We'll never know. Because there are some people that just become that damaged that they just kill. And then there are others that are just psychopaths and sociopaths. Here in the UK, this is one thing. In America, I don't understand why you have to pay for therapy for a child. Like I say, I think it might be different in this country because we have universal healthcare across the board. But in the US, you don't. And this is something that is costing the American government millions, I would imagine, through incarceration because people are committing criminal behaviour and substance abuse, etc. That it's costing them millions on social, child protection and all that. It's costing them millions in the school field. If they actually gave children free therapy, and I'll explain why I'm saying this in a sec, it might help. I've known several cases in this country, and I'm talking about case studies mainly on this instance, where a child is showing signs of abuse. So then that child is then withdrawn from that abusive household, put into one that isn't, and that is actually good for them, and then that child is then given therapy. When that child grows up and becomes an adult, they become a valued and true member of society, and they don't abuse children. I've seen this happen multiple times. And I'm not saying that our system's perfect, because it isn't. But I'm saying if you know a child's been abused, why not give them therapy that's free that would help them? It's like, I know a lot of people call Dr. Phil out for some of his shit, but one thing I will say is, one thing he does offer is counselling. And he will support people through counselling and through anything that they need on that front, because he knows how much help counselling can offer. I'm not saying that it's for everybody, because it isn't, but what I'm saying is there's a reason why it is the go-to for help for people that have been in abusive situations and such and things like that. And like I said before, some victims aren't as affected as others, partially due to the way that they're made, partially due to how they learn to cope with the abuse, and then there are also those that completely forget. And the only issue is when those memories then come up, it can cause even more damage. So, and this is something I'm going to end on. if you see anything questionable, anything that you're not sure of, then speak to somebody. I'm not going to put any phone numbers because I know people from various different countries contact me. But you just need to type in child protection. Here in the UK, it's social services and the NSPCC or the police. So where you are, it would either be the police or Department of Human Services in the US, and I don't know what it's called in other countries, and people like that. And for those that are going to come to this channel that are pro-pedophile, if you post any comment about anything to do with the way you live your life and why I'm wrong, that comment is going to get reported to the FBI and to my local police. And then that will be followed on by those people, because the comments I've had, again, when I've done videos like this in the past, are absolutely stomach churning, and I wish I'd done that then, but I didn't. But this time I will be doing. And I don't care what you say, I don't care if you think you're right, because I would actually guarantee that you're wrong. And there's a reason why I say that. You think that just because you're getting your jollies off that it's great. No, it's not. Not when you see the lasting effects that this can cause on a person. But then again, most child abusers don't give a shit, so. But like I say, if you see anything, speak up. Protect the children, that's what we're here for. And even if you see anything on YouTube, then pull it up with YouTube and then flag it to the FBI or flag it to somebody. And if you know where the channel's based, even better, get in touch with the police there. Anything. Just anything. Report what you need to report. I think everything would have been a lot better if people had reported Mike a lot sooner than we did, but and the same with 7 Awesome Kids, and the same with other people on the platform that have been caught, like Austin Jones. So we'll just have to wait and see. But let's just hope we can try and reduce the amount of children that are being abused as possible, because this shouldn't be happening, especially in the developed world. We should have figured this out by now. And the fact we haven't makes us look really stupid. So, stay safe, be good, have fun. I'll see you soon, because I'm going to have to go off and calm down before I even try and edit this video. Don't know why I talk about this, probably because I don't like the fact that kids are being abused, but it just gets me so pissed off. Anyway, catch you later, guys.